I'm Keith Becker, the president of Dee Dee's Rentals. The pressing question is, what is happening in Santa Rosa? I can tell you, I was there. There was a city council meeting on August 16th, at which time an ordinance that had been created by a specialized firm, the ordinance was submitted to and reviewed by city council members. It was brought up for discussion. It was discussed at great length, and in some ways, it was amended on the fly to make it even more stringent. It was passed that evening. It will come up for a second reading on August 30th at the next city council meeting on that date. If passed at that time, it will go into effect as of September 29th and will impact a number of properties in Santa Rosa. There is not necessarily there's no room right now, however, to actually do anything to say, okay, we've got time before the 29th of September. That's not correct, because there is a temporary rent control and temporary just cause moratorium, both of which have been instituted previously, which have the effect of temporarily holding down anything until this ordinance can itself go into effect at the end of September. There is a small silver lining, and that is that this ordinance will only impact properties that are also impacted by Costa-Hawkins Act, which means multi-unit buildings built before February 1st, 1995. And City of Santa Rosa has clarified that to mean fourplexes and above, and also triplexes if the owner is not one of the residents of the 3 units. So single-family residences, condos, duplexes are all excluded from this ordinance at present. That's not to say that it can't be tightened up by an additional measure sometime in the future. I am seriously concerned that that is a possibility going into the future. I'm also seriously concerned because the county of Sonoma, cities like Healdsburg, Petaluma, other surrounding locations are keeping a close eye on Santa Rosa, and this success of the rent stabilization ordinance in Santa Rosa may have impacts as we go throughout the county and other cities and what they might consider in the future. Let me tell you what the ordinance includes. It includes a rollback. The rollback means that there is now a benchmark. The rents that you were charging as of January 1st, 2016 is the measurement of what the allowable rent is. And if you raise the rent more than 3% since January 1st, 2016, it may be unenforceable. How that is going to be impacted, do you give the money back to the tenants? What do you do? That has yet to be determined. But January 1st, 2016, what was the rent for your tenant at that point? That is the starting point. There's a 3% cap on rent increases, excepting those instances where you can institute major capital improvements. The major capital improvements must be submitted to a program administrator for approval before you pass the cost on to your tenant. The formula for figuring out the major capital improvements and whether you can pass it on to the tenant is it has to be 8 times the monthly rent for all units impacted. So, for example, if you have a fourplex and all of those units rent for $1,000, the major capital improvement, even to be considered, must exceed $32,000 in order to even be submitted for a pass-through. There are extensive tenant protections to prevent notices to vacate, including details that could conceivably mean that tenants have a life estate, even to the extent that it could pass generation to generation. Approved notices to vacate would require the landlord to pay relocation costs, an amount equal to 3 times the monthly rent plus $1,500. And bear in mind, this is not 3 times the monthly rent that you are charging. So if you were being a generous landlord and were charging only $1,000 for your 3-bedroom house, but you have to relocate your tenants, you are not paying 3 times $1,000. You are paying 3 times what they will have to pay in the present market, which for a 3-bedroom house could be in excess of $2,000 per month. So do the math. Suddenly that becomes $7,500 or more. There's a program administrator and staff, both for the capital improvement program and for the rent stabilization program itself. And the initially calculated budget will exceed $1 million annually. In many ways, large and small, intentionally or unintentionally, this ordinance was constructed in a way that if you, the landlord, do not abide by it exactly and precisely, it could blow up in your face. An official from the North Bay Organizing Project, a pro-tenant advocacy group, called the August 16th vote the most significant tenant protections passed in California in the last 30 years. And if you're aware of what rent controls have been instituted in California in the last 30 years, that's a onerous statement. That's not a good thing. Seemingly in each instance, when the city council could have chosen a step that would either help the landlords and property owners or help the tenants, the default choice was seemingly to always provide greater protection for tenants at the expense of landlords. I've said previously, property management can be a difficult business. This ordinance, the choices, the impact of the city council are even more difficult. There are numerous smart, professional people who are committed to looking out for your interests, even in the midst of this chaos. Please feel free to call or email me. If you are a property owner, there are ways you can help. If you are a property owner, I'm committed to helping you succeed, even in this challenging market. I'm Keith Becker from Didi's Rentals.